They said it couldn't happen, that no loving parent could be erased from their child's life. But here you are, and you're not alone. Welcome to iWasErased Reflections, a podcast for parents, for grandparents, and our children who are living through the trauma of parental alienation and or abduction. I'm David Shubert, an advocate, a parent, and a survivor who's lived this nightmare firsthand in living color. Each episode begins with a reflection. Sometimes it's a rant. Sometimes it's a wake-up call, and then we unpack it together. No fluff, just honest, real talk about alienation, court failures, and the emotional wreckage it leaves behind. This isn't therapy. It's not legal advice. Instead, it's truth, it's pain, and it's hard-earned hope that lives inside us all. That's why these conversations matter. In this episode, I take an honest look at a question that many of us often ask, but rarely do we ever get an answer to. Who are the alienators? I talk about what I've seen over the years, how they present themselves, how they manipulate, and why they're often believed. Alienators don't always look like villains. Sometimes they appear calm, composed, and even caring, until you see what happens behind closed doors. Now, I'm not here to diagnose or label. I'm here to expose the patterns that tear families apart and to help other parents recognize them sooner. Because understanding who the alienators are is often the first step towards stopping the cycle and protecting what's left of our connection with our children. So stick around and join me as we talk about who the alienators are. You know, it's funny, but when people hear the words alienation, they automatically imagine something loud, like a fight, a fallout, or anything major that's happening along those lines. But in truth, it usually starts out real quiet. And for the most part, it can actually look like a form of help or even support. Then little by little, your choices start to shrink. Your circle gets smaller. And then the story being told about you stops sounding like the life you actually lived. By the time you actually do feel the drift, the ground is already shifted. And that's when the volume goes up, the mask slips down, the arguments get louder, the accusations get bolder. That's also when the court stuff starts showing up, the filings, the hearings, the orders. Now, what may have started out as quiet suddenly got turned up to full volume. Now, if any of this sounds familiar, or if you're just trying to understand more about the inner workings of alienation, you're in the right place. You see, this is where I try to make sense of what rarely does. But before we get too far into this, let me first start off by introducing myself. My name is David Shubert, and I'd like to welcome you to iWasErased Reflections. This is where I speak about parental alienation from my own lived experiences as both a left behind and alienated parent. Now, because of this, I'm able to tell it in first person because I've lived it. And like many of you, I too was married to an alienator. Now, each week I'll be sharing a new reflection. And after I read today's piece, stick around because afterwards we'll break it down together in plain language. Today's reflection is titled, Who Are the Alienators? Now, my hope is that it brings clarity without piling on self-blame, naming how alienators operate and easing the weight of not seeing it sooner. Now, for me, it's been more than 18 years of being locked in a power struggle with my alienator. In all that time, I've probably asked myself the same question more than 100 times over, and never once did I find an answer. And that question I'm talking about is, how did I not see it? Now, I now know the answer, but in truth, I spent years beating myself up while it took its time finding me. These days, however, I no longer subscribe to issues of self-doubt, nor do I chalk it up to being young and naive. Instead, I see it for what it was. I was deceived by a master manipulator who knew exactly what kind of person she wanted for her next victim, and I fit the bill. Now, living through all this has changed how I see people. And because of my experiences, I've had some folks approach me over the years and ask, can you actually spot an alienator before it's too late? My honest answer is no. No, you really can't, because the truth is, you just don't see who they really are until that mask slips. Usually, it's either because they're ready to reveal who's hiding behind it, or because it loosens up enough by mistake when they thought no one was looking. By then, it's usually too late. You're already caught up in their web, whether it's mental, emotional, legal, or there are kids in the middle. It all has a hold on you, and the truth is, leaving at that point is a lot harder than you ever imagined. Which brings us to the main question of why you're here today. Who are the alienators? Well, first off, I can tell you right now, they don't look like the villains you'd find on TV. In fact, they blend right in with the rest of us. I've even seen them come across as well-intentioned relatives. Friends who go from being supporters to narrators, and even your neighbors. You'll find them in the workplace, and even new partners who portray themselves as being a protector by shrinking your inner circle. Sometimes they're the faces we only know from a distance. Maybe they're a movie star with a perfect smile, or a music legend with a sold-out tour. Perhaps it's a titan of a Fortune 500 corporation, and even a judge with a calm demeanor. Whichever the case, I want you to keep something in mind. Titles do not change who a person is. Instead, they're just able to hide it better than most. Now, that said, there's something you should understand. Alienators are not looking for someone to share love or build a healthy, long-term relationship with. Rather, these individuals are looking for someone they can manipulate, someone whose attributes closely align with their specific need for control over others. You see, they select their victims based on a specific set of traits that align with their own agendas. Now, some of these traits, they may include empathy or kindness, a willingness to trust, and the ability to give multiple second chances. In other words, they gravitate to those of us who want to make a difference and are willing to see the goodness in others, even when it's hidden behind a fake charm and empty promises. Now, for myself, I've always been one of those kind of people that usually give the benefit of the doubt. There was even a time when I believed in the whole package. You know, love, second chances, and even how the deepest wounds can be repaired with time. Well, little did I know at the time that those same qualities would ultimately make me a target. And it's not just about a relationship. Rather, for the alienator, it's a game of power. You see, they're willing to do everything in their power to wear you down in an effort to control the situation and the narrative about you. Now, as we continue, we have to ask ourselves, what does this kind of control really look like in real life? Well, plainly said, it looks like a pattern, not a title. A comment gets trimmed here. A warning gets planted over there. Not yet, not today, suddenly becomes not ever. Those concerns start to sound just a little too rehearsed. And old stories tend to get rewritten until you doubt what you really know to be true. And that's how the playbook of an alienator unfolds. You see, they have no problem in twisting the story until you're left standing in the back corners of your own life. And all the while, you're second-guessing every move you ever make. Now, trust me, I've been there, and I know that spiral. But here's the simple truth. It wasn't me, and it wasn't you, and it wasn't the love that we gave, let alone the trust we handed to someone unworthy of it. Instead, it was the alienator who purposely sought us out, who studied us, and then used those openings to deceive us into loving them. Now, we can't control their choices, so you might as well put that thought out of your mind right now. However, we can choose ours. You see, your story doesn't end with the alienation or emotional abuse. Rather, it begins again the very moment you stop blaming yourself. As alienated parents, we are not victims. Instead, we are survivors. We've been through hell, but guess what? We're still standing. So when self-doubt starts to creep in, I want you to remember something. You were chosen by someone with nefarious intentions, not because of any fault on your behalf, but rather it's because of your strengths, the things they can never take away. Now, if any of this reflection resonates with you, let that recognition stand on its own. Because from this moment on, I want you to remember that you don't owe anyone a defense of your reality. Just keep showing up in small, verifiable ways. In the messages you send your kids, the dates you remember, and the promises you keep. That's how you stay visible to yourself and to your child, even when others try to rewrite your narrative. And it's how you come to recognize the answer to who are the alienators. Now that we've wrapped up the reflection, let's take a pause and unpack it together as we explore what it all really means. Now, as you may recall, I began this reflection by referencing how alienation doesn't always make a big scene when it arrives. Often, it creeps in quietly, and it can begin to feel like help at first. I said that because that's how it slips past a lot of good people. You see, early on, it doesn't appear in the form of danger. Instead, it comes across as charming and sometimes protective. Then before you know it, your choices start to shrink. Your circle thins, and a much different narrative concerning you tends to show up that doesn't even match the life you've lived. From there, I posed the question that followed me for a lot of years. How did I not see it? Well, the truth of the matter is, you don't ever see it until that mask slips down just enough that allows this to happen. Usually it's because they either decide to show themselves or it loosens up when they think no one's looking. It's during that moment when everything comes into clear view, and it's also the reason I said it the way I did. So stop kicking yourself in the butt after the fact. Just learn to spot the pattern when and if it ever does reveal itself. Then, I made mention of why leaving an alienator can be a really hard choice once you get tangled up in their web. Typically, it's because emotional hooks are already in place. Legal traps may exist, or there are kids caught in the middle. Now, these aren't excuses. They're just the ground you're standing on. So when someone says, let just go, you know that it doesn't line up with the reality you're living. People on the outside need to understand that the exit for us parents who are living through this trauma are narrow and the costs are high. So going back to the question of who are the alienators, let's break it down and name what they look like up close. Because they don't come with sirens, and they certainly don't have flashing lights. They come in quietly. They blend in. They show up as well-meaning relatives and friends who once stood with you but are now acting like the narrators of your life. Neighbors, co-workers, and even partners who seem protective, but slowly and quietly are shrinking your world. Sometimes they show up as polished. You know the kind. Wrapped in talent, dressed in titles. The lawyers, the politicians, the entertainers. They've got the credentials, they've got the charm, and they've got the spotlight. But here's the thing. Titles don't change who a person is. They just make it easier for them to hide. Next, I told you what alienators are really after, and trust me, it isn't a healthy partnership. Instead, it's about the control they seek to have over you. They look for empathy. They look for kindness. They look for trust. And they look for the willingness from those who are willing to give multiple second chances, just like I did. I know this because I carried most of those traits, and I was the one who gave the benefit of the doubt. I believed in love, and that even the deepest wounds could heal over time. That made me a mark for every alienator in town. Now, if you see yourself in any of those things, they're not personality defects. They're your strengths. You have to understand that the alienator studied you because of them and used them to their advantage. Now, with everything I've said up to this point, you now have the pattern, at least the part you can actually see. Most times it starts out small. Maybe it's a comment trimmed here, a warning tossed over there. Not today, not yet evolves into not ever. Next comes the concerns that start to sound rehearsed. Rules suddenly change in the middle of a conversation. Old stories get rewritten to the point that you start having doubts about what you know really happened. When those start to cluster, you're not looking at a mood. You're looking at a pattern. Then I laid out the cost of that pattern. Essentially, you get pushed into the back corners of your own life, always second-guessing every move you make. This is what the Alienator's playbook does to a person who's on the receiving end. So if you saw yourself in that line, that was the intention. It was meant to grab back a bit of floor that's under your feet. Now after that, if you recall the part where I drew a line in the reflection, where I said, it wasn't me, it wasn't you, it wasn't our love or even our trust. Instead, it was the alienator who sought us out. They studied the openings and used them. This is where the self-blame has no choice but to start to loosen its grip on you. So if you've been carrying that weight all around all this time, this is the place to set it down right now. And by the way, one of the things I mentioned earlier is that your response is still in your hands. Now, while you can't control the alienator's choices, you can choose your own. So just remember, change starts when self-blame loosens its grip. From there, you decide the next right move. That choice is yours, and yours alone. Now, as we near the end of this, let's keep it real. Stick to the things that matter. Send that message to your kid just to check in. Mark the dates that count, birthdays, school events, whatever reminds them that you're still here. And when it's your turn to show up, do it. That's how you stay visible, even when someone else is trying to rewrite your story. And if you're still asking, who are the alienators? Just remember what we unpacked today. They blend in, they push for control, and they seek out the compassionate ones, the ones who care, who feel, who give. But once you see that pattern, you can finally set that blame down because it was never yours to carry in the first place. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, follow the show. And if you can, leave a quick rating or review. And if someone you know needs the language, share an episode. Who knows? You might just be the bridge they've been waiting for. In closing, I hope you enjoyed spending time with me again and listening to my reflection as I share my thoughts, my journey, and my views that are often a mirror of many of you as well. Until next time, I hope you remember that you're not alone. There are many of us willing to be your shoulder to lean on, an ear to listen, and even a quiet understanding of what you're going through. So until their eyes find yours again, stay steady and stay strong.